Hello and welcome to a CX Moment. I'm Sarah Reed from Zendesk, and thank you for joining us today from, it looks like, all over the countries. We have the Philippines and Malaysia and Singapore and people coming in from Sydney and Melbourne, Auckland. Thank you. Looks like someone's here from Vietnam. We are so excited to chat with you all. If you don't know a little bit about a CX moment, each quarter we get together with an expert in customer experience. And sometimes we talk about marketing, sometimes we talk about customer service, sometimes we talk business and leadership, but everything always seems to come back to customer experience. And the details of what we talk about is really up to you. So please ask your questions in the Q&A. And today we are going to be chatting with Mitch Lowe. Mitch was a co-founding executive of Netflix. He was an executive at McDonald's and the president and COO of Redbox, which was the third largest video rental company in America. And it grew to over 35,000 locations and $1.5 billion in revenue. Mitch then became the CEO of MoviePass. MoviePass was a movie theater subscription service that acquired 3 million subscribers in just 8 months. And while MoviePass might not have succeeded, it is still a high growth tale with a lot of customer experience learnings along the way. And so I imagine you want to hear some of those fantastic experiences. So please help me in welcoming Mitch Lowe.
Thank you, Sarah. That's a very nice introduction. Of course, as you know, customer service and how you treat customers to me is almost the core of any business. And yes, I'll talk a little bit about different experiences that I think in many ways led to the success of Netflix and Redbox, and in many ways taught the leadership what was important to customers.
Well, I know everyone is super excited to hear that. So I'm going to disappear for a little while. I'm going to let you chat. And then I'll be back in, let's say, about 10 minutes, and we'll start taking some questions.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah, so as I was saying, customer service and understanding what customers are saying about your business is probably the core of innovation and where new ideas come from. One of the things that I've always found about executives and the way they think about customer service is more as a cost center than what it really truly can be, and that is your closest connection with customers. And I think we all know listening to your customer and understanding what's driving them is where ideas come from. In fact, at early days of Redbox, and this almost happened accidentally. We rented, this was at a time in the early 2000s where office space was easy to get. And we had a space so big we were rattling around. And customer service, as it grew, ended up slowly but surely taking over office space. And so we had our executives intermingled with customer service. And I'll never forget the things that I would overhear that would give me an idea of how to make the service better. I also remember my days at McDonald's, where McDonald's was facing challenges from, in those days, upstart restaurants and food services like Starbucks and other fast food locations. And McDonald's was starting to have flat business. And the McDonald's executives were always in touch with customer service, but they didn't take the time and invest the money with their CX team to be passionate about the product. And what I think is such a big opportunity for companies is to help your customer service appreciate, use, and weigh in on what needs to change in the product. Who better than those people who hear what the customers are saying? And I think everybody in customer service knows very rarely are people calling you or contacting you or reaching out to you in chats to compliment the service. I mean, it does happen, but mostly they're complaining. Mostly they've got a problem to solve. And though every one of those problems is an opportunity for the company, as long as they get translated to management. How do they get translated? They get translated either by the leadership of the company sitting in on calls or building closer relationships with the customer service, or even from time to time learning how to be a customer service representative. In addition to that, you have to care about the product and the service, the company you're working for, enough to be able to tell the people who that it will reach decision makers on what you're seeing over and over again. You can't rely on the analysis or the reports they get. You have to care enough about your customer to be able to tell them the things they may not want to hear. And that is how you can create additional value for what you do. Sometimes it's going to be a little awkward. Nobody likes to hear that repeatedly you're hearing the same complaint. At Redbox, our biggest issue was scratched disc. So people would rent the DVD, they'd get it home, and it wouldn't play. And that turned into something in the beginning where we all said, well, that's just the way the business is. The discs are vulnerable. But enough people in our customer service reminded us about this problem that we went to the effort of working with manufacturers who work for the studios to have the surface of the disc changed. That resulted in huge increase in passion about the product. Rentals went up. It's those little things that can make such a difference. What's sad in many ways, some companies wait until things are falling apart before they make changes. No one here probably remembers, but there used to be a company called Blockbuster. It was a $5 billion a year business. At the same time, it ended up being one of the top 10 most hated brands. And they were hated because of what they would do is charge a late fee if you returned it a day or two later, sometimes $3, $4, $5 for each day that you were late. They kept doing the same thing over and over. And when we founded Netflix, we thought, we're going to be different. We're going to figure out kind of almost a new business model that eliminates late fees. And it's helping your client and your customer understand, what they can do to change that I think will make a huge difference and add lots of value. Here we are now in the, kind of moving into the future. And a lot of times, I think back about, what could I have done better? And believe me, it's like that list is a super, super long list. But I probably in every single company I've worked at, the thing I wish I had done more of is forcing the leadership team to spend more time with customer service. And in fact, even do more than that, provide the product and service to customer service so they can also use it and invest a little bit more ownership for improving the product and reward them. But the key thing I wish I had done is almost make it mandatory for a certain amount of time each month for my leadership teams to spend time with customer service. Now, here we are today. We talk about the metaverse and where things are headed. It very much reminds me of the late 1990s when everything was going onto the internet. In fact, you could create a business that was in the physical world and put it online and raise money by just walking into a VC until the dot-com bubble burst in 2001. And and during that time, what we were all trying to do is to replicate what was going on in the physical world online. And one of the kind of big challenges was, people would walk into a store and they would have a clerk, they would have someone, a salesperson, they would have a sales representative that could explain the product, show you how it works, show you what the service is. And that all went away when we went online. And we created now what is this, gigantic world of customer support, which, is really the face of your company. But now that we are building this kind of third dimension, if you take the physical stores, move them online, now you have a second dimension. And now we're building these metaverses where you'll have this third dimension, and all of them still being in existence. So some companies will have all three. So how do we take what we learned during the transition to the internet days into this new world? And for you in customer service, it's going to be a fascinating experience. It's going to offer all kinds of new ways to interact with the customers of your clients as well as with your clients. And I'm very, very excited about that potential. And with that, I'm happy to answer some questions. And Sarah, if you'll come back, you can help me.
I would love to help you out with that.
Thank you.
So, thanks so much for sharing some of these great ideas and tales. I think let's start with this intersection of leadership and customer service that you talked a bit about, because that's really about the company placing value in service.
Yeah.
Do you think customer support can ever move beyond cost center to profit center if executives aren't buying into that?
It's yes, I absolutely do believe it. It's one of those efforts that will always take longer than you wish. It's almost a kind of a critical thing for companies like yours to make the investment and the long term, showing them how valuable you can be. And you may get stares, in the beginning, or people who don't quite get it. But every time your team makes a recommendation that ends up being a new way to deliver the product or sell the product, you're going to become more and more valuable. And this more and more. You're the only ones who really know what the customers are doing, and executives have the tendency to not even get into detail on the reports. And if there is the more ways you can get them to see what you're learning from your customer, and sprinkled in with ideas that look at what's not working. I might have told you this one time. I always like to hire someone who's never had a job before in the organization, and I always ask them their opinion, because they're not politically, they don't know how to be politically correct, so they'll just blurt out, really truly what they believe. and where your managers or directors will most often tell you what you want to hear. And customer service can be that voice for the company that maybe no one else is telling them.
That's such a great idea. And it's also a really good indicator of what your customers are really feeling when you're tapping into not just your customer service team, but the individuals who are really new to the role and new to the
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
because to them, it's, they don't, to your point, they're not harnessed by all of this history and this
Right.
and the political like atmosphere and the concern of like who's gonna, if I tell this to someone, is product going to be mad or is an executive going to be mad? So, oh,
Right.
that is such a great idea.
Oh, it's horrible. And the I think the really interesting thing is that when you are working in customer service, you also have the challenge that, I just need to deal with this customer and move on. I'm not, I love working for this company, but I may not want to take the time to make suggestions or, talk about something that I'm starting to notice. So it's incumbent upon the company who's hiring Zendesk to also, you know, help you get more passionate about about the product that you're servicing, whether it's, you know giving it to you for your employees, giving it to you for free, or just they have to create a stronger relationship and almost a kind of a way where you feel part of their company.
So we've talked about this before, and I think this is another one of those lessons that's really important for people, is that at Netflix and some of the other organizations you worked at, you didn't give away the product to executives or
Right.
even to anyone else in the organization. So at Netflix, you
Hmm.
had to have a subscription just like everyone else, just like your
Yeah.
customers. So you understood the process. You
Hmm.
understood what it was like to return, what it was like to
Hmm.
ask for a refund, what it was like to
Yeah.
cancel. Uh,
Yeah.
and was that a hard thing for executives to understand, like the rationale of why?
It was, yeah, I think in the very beginning it was, well, that's a perk of my job. But, the explanation really was logical in that the only way, we can actually see how our customers are, experiencing our service is by experiencing it the same way. So if you had a problem, you didn't have a VIP line for customer service, you had to get in line just like everybody else. And pretty soon people are saying, oh my God, we need more people. We need more capacity. And, it's those types of things. And sometimes they would experience, my credit card was charged inaccurately, or, they'd experience the same problems. So I think what really was great about that is when you reviewed the data, when you reviewed the kind of analysis of the customer complaints, they resonated with you. Yeah, they actually meant something, and kind of in a visceral way. So you didn't just say, "Oh, that's a number. Let's see how it goes next month."
That is such a great point because it almost becomes personal because you've experienced it yourself.
Yeah.
And so you've said that that's one of the things you wish you had done differently is gotten
Mhm.
leadership more involved in support.
Yeah.
I think there were some people here who would love to know the brass tacks of how would you have made that happen? Because a lot of
Yeah.
people are in organizations where that sounds great, but
Hmm.
they don't know how to actually make it happen.
Yeah. It's not, you know, that metric driven companies can do it easier than ones that don't. And the way you would do it, I think, is you wouldn't. I know that you almost go too far when you force your executive to actually learn to be a customer service rep. That's a kind of a bridge too far in a way. I tried that, and
That didn't go
I
over
mean,
so well, huh?
no, and as much as we try, we can't do your job very well. But to so what I found the best way to do it is to intermingle in an office space, or now in this virtual world we're living in. If there was a way for it might be something like, your goal each quarter as an executive is to come up with an idea for improving the service that you hear through customer service, and then give them several ways to do that. They can go to the customer service center, the call center. They can log in. They get a way to log into the reports. But some it might be some motivation and some measurement that ties to their performance reviews, that the only way you could achieve it is by getting close to customer service. I think it also comes from the culture of the company. I
Right.
think the leadership has to have this customer centric focus and culture. And, the logical next step is, well, who's facing your customer? You aren't. You're now working from home, and probably have never talked to a customer or seen what they say. So I think it probably is a combination, of those two. It's definitely not easy, and
It's
maybe it's
not.
easier now. I don't know.
And Louise is asking a very tactical question of how much time do you think leaders and execs should spend with customer service in order to have that value? Is there an actual time, or is it more of just being near them and interacting?
Yeah, I think it a lot will depends on the form of the customer contact.
Mm,
So, if you sit in a call center and you're listening to what's being said, and you're only listening to the call center rep responding, you're kind of only getting half of the story. If you are, if you have, an hour or two a week where you can log in and watch the chat room or watch the communications, I think that's enough. I think that's enough because, I mean, if nothing was going on, then you're not going to learn very much. But,
right.
you know, usually you guys are right size so that you're really busy. And I probably would say a lot of people on this call are too busy.
I would
Hopefully.
agree with that. Too busy. And
But
we'd love to hear some examples from other companies of how
Mhm.
you've. So drop it into the chat if you figured out a really great way to get your executives involved in listening to customer service. One of the companies I used to work for, we actually made it. We would package up QA recordings. And so
Mhm.
sometimes they would be chats, sometimes they would be calls,
Yeah.
and our executives would get together once a quarter, and we'd
Mhm.
listen to them and read through them together. And it was just an
Wow.
eye-opening experience for them. And
Yeah.
we did it with our entire C staff, and we
That's
do
a
it for
great
about an
idea.
hour. And so it was baked into their schedule every quarter,
Mhm.
and they would learn an awful lot about what customer service was experiencing, and also what was going on with the company and the product.
Yeah, I bet. That's a great idea. That's a really good idea.
All right, let's talk a bit about, you know, let's see, where do I want to go? There's so many directions. Um, Jeremy, I love this question because this is something that so many customer service organizations go through. Jeremy wants to know, how do you correct the perception of customer service being an unglamorous job? Did you ever
Yeah.
experience that?
Oh yeah. 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 I definitely have experienced that, and I think it's you see that with. I always look at it as a sign of bad upbringing when people mistreat, people who are trying to help them. Uh, you know, Facebook is filled with video clips of people being rude to
Yes.
people in a store, and and I know I've heard it. When I've listened to customer service calls, it's. I think in a way, it is maybe one of the most important jobs and I think people should really be proud of of helping customers. I can't tell you how many times calling different airlines that I've been just treated amazingly well, where you can tell the person, cares, that she gets it right or he gets it right. And, now I'm in love with those airlines.
Hmm.
It just
Yeah.
has made just an amazing difference. And I hope the representatives that I was on the phone with, at least I felt this, that they actually felt really good about what they were doing. And I think a lot of times it translates, to the customer how you feel about your job. Do you feel it? Are you just getting through the day, and are customers annoying you, or do you really kind of value what you're doing? There is stigma for some people who weren't raised right, for anybody who's helping them, which I find horrible. But
And it's also, to your point, it is a culture thing, right?
Mhm.
There are organizations who, and I truly believe this is changing more and more, which is a great thing, that
Mhm.
companies are recognizing the value of their support organization, and and a lot of it does have to do with their culture. And so
Mhm.
we've got another question around that. And
Mhm.
what lessons did you learn in building that Netflix culture? Were there anything specific that you were
Mhm.
like, this is how companies should be run?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was so lucky. I shared a 4-foot table with Patty McCord, who you know uh, ran HR, and I think was truly the one responsible for the culture there. She wrote a book which is wonderful called Powerful, uh, and she's just an amazing person. What I learned from her, and I think this had a huge impact, was this idea, which they called context, not control. And so the idea was hire the best people you possibly can, and always try to find the person who will really love what they're doing at your company. But then tell them what their mission is. What do you really, why are you here? What do you need to accomplish? And then let them figure out how to do it. It's the idea was, don't micromanage, and don't tell them exactly what to do or how to accomplish their job. And what we found is that when people have authority and responsibility, and you've got the right people, they really excel, and actually they really love what they're doing, because it's it's like, this is mine. I created this. um, it doesn't work in every position. It was hard to do that in the finance department.
Right.
um, but and I always remember one of the uh, uh, junior analysts would always come to me and said, "How come we don't get that kind of freedom?" But I think that was one. The second one was diversity in the organization from top to bottom. And in fact, Patty, who is now on the LinkedIn board, uh, uh, from time to time gets hired to go consult with Fortune 500 companies. And
Okay.
she told me one time, without telling me the name of the company, she went into the boardroom. Uh, they had given her a big check to come in and give them some advice. She came in and saw one woman and 10 men, and she ripped up the check and said, "Call me back when this is 50-50." Uh, so, and that diversity is really diversity for representation of who your customer are. So, the that kind of diversity gives all these, makes going to work really interesting. You hear different points of view, you hear different ideas, and I think that was always a real key at Netflix.
Do you think that that was one of the things that really set Netflix apart from all the other streaming services? Because let's face it, there are a lot of them now. And
Yeah, there are. It's yeah, it's getting challenging. There's like three or four, I think, major components. One of them, of course, was the diversity, the context, not control. But then on top of that, there was a very rigid performance evaluation. So everybody had quantitative goals that you could miss a couple quarters, and again, like I said, you weren't told how to do it. You were given the mission. For example, here's how many subscribers we need from this region during this period of time, or this is how we want to improve our net promoter score. There's two or three things you have to improve by 5%. It was, so everybody knew exactly what was expected of them and given the resources to do it, but then they could figure out themselves. So it was the combination of kind of a so-called balanced scorecard performance system and the flexibility to do how to perform your job how you wanted, and then a very diverse culture. But at the same time, the leadership, whether it was Reed or Patty or others, they just are, some of the smartest people around. And, Ted Sarandos probably knows more about entertainment than I think anybody I've ever met.
and it seems, and I have so many questions. So I want to say thank you to Kevin for asking that question. Um, you talked a bit about metrics. You brought up NPS, you brought up the NP or the balanced scorecard. What were
Mm-hmm.
some of those other CX related metrics that Netflix really cared about?
Mm-hmm. Well, we had, the standard ones like, calls per hour. We had a cost of customer service. But more importantly, we did an NPS of the customers who had contacted customer service. And so, we had the, the kind of the random subscribers, and then we looked at the net promoter score of the people who contacted customer service. It was always 10 to 15 points below what the average is, which makes sense. You have a problem, something's not working, you're not going to be as in love with the company as if you had no problems. And then the goal was, the targets were, how do we improve that? And we dissected what were the reasons why someone would give you a lower score after contacting customer service. They weren't always because of customer service, they were because of the problem they had in the first
Right.
place. But what part of that we isolated, what part of that was like, how much could you offset by having just super nice people who really act and care about the customer? And, I mean, a great example is Zappos, which goes so beyond what the expectation is, that people who use that product just love it because you contact customer service and they'll do anything for you. And so the measurement was isolating the other components of that drop uh, to how you were treated. Customer service was given a metric and a reward if they hit it to improve we set the baseline. Here's what the average MPS is after reaching out to customer service, and then we gave goals and metrics to improve that and measured that. So it kind of made it like a game. It was, I'm like scoring points, and of course there was financial rewards related to it, which it was like a super investment.
Do you think, and this is a question that's coming from Olivia, do you think you can have a great customer experience without a great product?
I think it would be really hard. Uh, you know, yeah, I don't think so. I think you have to have, you know, it always starts with the quality of the product and the service, and you can't have, there's lots of studies on this, but when you start to get a somewhere above a 5% complaint rate, you're not going to go very far. You know, and by 5%, what I mean is 5% of the transactions resulting in a customer service complaint. That's, let's, so, and I think that would be a measurement of a product that's not measuring up and something that really needs to change. And by the way, at Redbox, when we first launched the machine, 7% of our transactions resulted in a complaint because we hadn't built a kiosk that was kind of fail proof. It kept the disc kept sticking. The credit card wouldn't come out. It was horrendous, and it took 2 months to fix that and get it down. We got it down to about 1%, 1.25%.
Oh, now that's a fascinating story too, an example, because you had a really good product, but it was a faulty delivery mechanism of the product,
Exactly.
which is
Exactly.
really challenging for people to differentiate, right? It's like
Hmm.
the product
They put
becomes
them
the
all together.
delivery.
Yeah.
And so many organizations experienced this during the pandemic when
Hmm.
we had shortages of
Hmm.
product that we couldn't
Hmm.
get deliveries, or
Hmm.
our delivery system was so overloaded that product just
Hmm.
couldn't get to someone's house. But
Right.
you don't make that differentiation between the delivery and the product itself. So
Absolutely. That's right.
so it certainly leads to how important it is to have really good partners along every section of that
Yeah.
journey to the customer experience.
Yeah. No, it's critical. Today, the bandwidth delivery of content through all these streaming services, if it doesn't work, it's Netflix's fault or Paramount Plus's fault or
Right.
Disney Plus's fault. It's not, AWS or any of the servers that are out there. And so, yeah, it's critical. And this is another example of where if you're an executive and you're using the product and you see a delivery issue, you at least can distinguish which is, what's the problem. And I think all businesses today are utilizing and relying on several major partners, whether it's the bandwidth and then the movie
Hmm.
studios, combined onto an internet platform or a kiosk, and the guys who deliver them and install them and keep them running. It's all interrelated.
So let's talk a bit about the future and your predictions.
Hmm.
Uh, this is a question that's coming in around the future of customer service when the
Hmm.
metaverse is becoming so prevalent.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really, really fascinating. The way I'm envisioning the metaverse, and I'm sure I'm just scratching the surface, is like you're entering a mall or you're entering your home or you're just entering a whole new dimension. And in there will be avatars and maybe
Hmm.
even real looking people who are responding to your questions. So, for example, you may be sitting in Manila answering a call, but to the customer, they're looking at you behind the counter of a store. And ideally, you can see them and they can see you. And it doesn't have to be an avatar, it could be your face and their face. You can create a connection. They're sitting there talking to you about, you're hearing their voice. So people are wandering through a store or wandering through a selection of services. or they're at a baseball game, and the person is could be anywhere in the world, but looks like they're behind the counter. And what's best is you can see them. Customer service can now, it's not just a voice or a text.
Right.
It's like you can kind of sense a connection.
You can
So I
actually have more of that conversation with someone and build that relationship with someone, even if it's just their avatar.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, when chat started, it added a new dimension on top of phone, text. All those are added dimensions. I think for customer service, this will kind of create an almost real world customer service experience, in a way, going back, to the pre-internet days where, most customer service took place in a location.
Oh, that's so very true, isn't it? It's hard
Yeah,
to
I'm not,
imagine a life before the internet.
right. It wasn't that long ago.
I know. So, keeping your prediction hat on, do you think that AI will continue to play a bigger part in customer service? And this is a question that's actually coming in from Jeremy.
Jeremy. Yeah, I think I see AI really as a tool to help customer service uh, uh, kind of be ready for with answers. It's almost like, the more if uh, if you have an idea based on where this person is coming from, what product they bought, what their complaint is, there's probably all kinds of suggestions that can be made about how to deal with it. And I think this is just creates a tool that makes it easier to get the response right. I don't think it I don't think it automates or takes the place of people. I think that there always will be more and more automation, but I think there's going to be more and more need for interaction with a real person. So I think they work hand in hand.
Well, I hope that you are absolutely correct because I do think so much of the time AI and automate AI gets a bad rap, but when you start to connect it around automation, then it
Hmm.
starts to make sense for people because it is so much around automating those routine tasks, those
Yeah.
routine and rote conversations, and allowing our humans to answer the
Hmm.
more valuable things.
Yeah, to do the
Uh,
things we do best.
So let's in our last few minutes, because believe it or not, we only have a few minutes left.
Hmm.
Andrew has this great question around Blockbuster. Do you
Hmm.
think that if they had changed their customer service policies, that they could perhaps still be in existence?
Yes, and in fact, they failed several times, and all the things they failed at, they would have known had they listened, to customer service. So the first thing they did wrong is just ignore what people hated. The thing I mentioned before, the late fees. It represented 15% of their revenue. But really, what was going on is they were too afraid to change. They were afraid that if they changed, revenue might go down. And then ultimately, they did change. They got rid of late fees, and then they were too afraid to kind of promote it or tell anybody about it. And so, they went, and the same thing happened in their interaction with Netflix. We were running out of money and tried to sell them half of the company. And they told us, well, we know the business much more than you. If it's such a good idea, we'll do it ourselves. And eventually they did do it themselves. But what they were doing is they had a video store business with one pricing model and a mail order or movies by mail subscription service with a whole different pricing. They were too afraid to put them together, and that bravery of Netflix. And this was after I left. So, I wasn't a part of this, brave decision. But in 2008, when they launched streaming for the first time, uh, they knew they were going to cannibalize most of their very profitable movies by
Right.
mail business. Had Blockbuster said, listen, the future is streaming, and there's this interim step of mailing movies to people's homes, you know, let's just go all in on that and take the risk that that's going to succeed. And they were too afraid, to do that.
Well, that is a really radical mindset, isn't it? That
Yeah.
we're willing to risk this very profitable side of our business in order to invest and take this big bet
Yeah.
on something very, very new.
Yeah.
Which leads me to ask, you've made some really radical decisions in your career. Did you ever make a decision or one of those risks that totally just scared you?
Uh, I scare myself every day. Uh, the you know I there's a lot of them, but uh, one that just comes to mind just because we're talking is I was always terrified of getting up in front of people and talking, and I got over it when my son gave me a Far Side joke, a little cartoon that I used to carry in my pocket, and it would make me laugh before I'd get up on stage. So I never imagined that I would really enjoy this. And what I found is like I meet the most amazing people like yourself, and it's just it was one of those. This is why I always say is sometimes you just have to close your eyes and move forward and take the chance that something will come of it. When I met Mark Randolph, who's really the founder of Netflix, I was exhibiting at a trade show, internet product I had developed. And, he came up to the booth, was just kind of asking a bunch of questions. And then he started to walk away. And I thought, wait a minute, this guy is really interesting. I don't even know your name or your phone number. And I grabbed his backpack and pulled him back and said, wait a minute, give me your name, what's your name? Well, how we should talk sometime. And, I was the video guy, up until we hired Ted. So all the original like video ideas all came from that collaboration. And it wouldn't have happened had I not taken that chance of, him turning and hitting me. Uh, but I think that's really important in life is to take a few chances here and there, not always look at the pros and cons of stuff.
Is there anything that you really wanted to do at Netflix, or even at any of the companies that you were at, that for some reason or another you just couldn't get it to happen?
Yeah, oh God, there's a huge one. So this was a stealth project we called Netflix Express. And I was opening, these were the days when it took 1 to 3 days for our movie to get to your house. And and everybody said, I love your service, but it takes too long. And so this idea was putting kiosks. This is what led to Redbox. Putting kiosks in grocery stores where people go 2.5 times a week. They could drop off and pick up new movies there. They could sign up as a new customer there. And we set up a stealth project in Las Vegas with, I think it was 8 locations.
Okay.
And they just did amazingly well. I mean, they were really doing well. And analysts, this is shortly after we went public, Wall Street analysts heard about this and thought we were going backwards to the physical world instead of to the future of the digital. And the stock cratered. It went from $15 down to $9. You can see what the price is today. It's in the hundreds of dollars, and it split twice. So this was right at the beginning. And Reed had me shut it down, had me, close it up, pack it up, and it was that frustration that led me to take the offer from McDonald's to go help them build Redbox.
I don't think I knew that story, actually.
Yeah. It's in my
All right.
book, which is coming out in September. So
Oh, well,
read that.
very good plug. New book, September. That story will be in there, but you all
Yep.
heard it here first.
Oh, awesome.
All right. So as we are talking about, we're winding down here. I want to ask, what is something that really excites you in the customer service, customer experience space that you don't think people are focusing enough on?
Yeah. Well, I think there's somehow people aren't realizing that, so much of what your customers feel about your product can be translated through customer service. And, they don't come out on a page of statistics. They come from, all the things we've talked about today, all listening to what the customer is saying to your team, looking at kind of the trends. I just see customer service as, the more and more we live in this remote, kind of disconnected world, even not even going to the office all that much,
Mhm.
the more customer service in all types becomes kind of the key to understanding, what's going on. And so I just, I have learned so much. I can't even tell you how much I've learned from customer service. And it makes the data pop out. It makes me understand which data is actionable and which is really meaningful. And I think those two working together are critical for companies.
Well, that is a great message for all of us that we need to understand what our customers are asking for and not just be paying attention to the metrics, that
Yeah,
those two have to go hand in hand, and that our leaders have to be part of the solution.
yeah,
And the more that we can get them involved, the better our customer experience will ultimately be.
absolutely true.
Well, Mitch, it was such a pleasure. And so, a huge thanks for sharing your experiences with us. And thanks to all of you for sharing a moment with us. If you want to hear more from Zendesk, please join us on May 12th for Zendesk Relate. It's digital this year, it is everywhere. And so, please register at zendeskrelate.com. And with that, I want to again say thank you, stay safe, be helpful, and we'll chat again soon. Bye, everyone.